Welcome everybody, so I am back and bringing you guys a brand new movie review. So if you see an image of Sonic the Hedgehog behind me, that is the movie that we're going to be reviewing. This movie stars Jim Carrey as well as James Marsden. James Marsden has had some movies in the past that I think are relatively underrated, one of which is Straw Dogs. I think that's a really fantastic film that he's done, and I've loved him ever since sort of the good old X-Men days where he played Cyclops. Jim Carrey himself has had sort of some stinkers in the past, but I think he's excellent in this movie. Everything about this movie, from the redesign that Jeff Fowler did, he's pretty much the person that directed this film. It was good on them for taking a couple of months off after pretty much the internet and myself got a hint of Sonic the Hedgehog's first design. That thing was hideous. I don't know who thought that would be a good idea to kind of put that thing out there for the world to see, but that trailer was pretty much god awful. And there's a reason why I didn't do a trailer reaction to that on the channel, and that's pretty much because of the fact that everybody at that time had done trailer reaction videos, and mostly for the fact that I don't like doing trailer reaction videos because they usually get copyright claimed, even though they fall under fair use, and I would just rather not have to deal with that on my channel and just kind of give you guys sort of my content where I pretty much talk to you guys about movies. And is Sonic the Hedgehog a better film because of the redesign? I think so. I think that this movie makes you care about the creature a little bit more due to the fact that this is a character that is from a different world, from a different planet entirely. He's pretty much an alien, and as you guys know, I'm huge into the sort of alien phenomena and sort of the lore that surrounds him. So mix that with a Sonic the Hedgehog style game, which I think Jeff Fowler was really sort of a fan of this film, because you can kind of tell that this is a film made by fans for fans, and he kind of took into account the fan feedback from sort of the backlash of the trailer. And it's like, we got to kind of do this differently, because if we don't do this differently and redesign this character, fans aren't going to want to go see this. They aren't going to want to pay their hard-earned cash, and I certainly paid my hard-earned cash to go see this in the theater. And what did I think about the film? This movie definitely touches upon sort of the feeling of loneliness in the film. Throughout the film, you've got Sonic, who's this creature from another planet. He kind of goes through a portal made from these rings, and they do some really interesting stuff with the Sonic the Hedgehog rings from the games and kind of bringing them into sort of this kind of realistic environment, because I was kind of wondering going into this film how they're going to kind of do this, how they're kind of translate sort of that thing where you got Sonic's constantly going through rings and stuff in this film, but they pretty much act like a portal, and apparently Sonic just has to think about it kind of like Jumper, and then he can kind of transfer himself through these rings to any different location that he wants to, or kind of like Rise of Skywalker but in a different way entirely. You get James Marsden. He's kind of a police officer, and he's trying to kind of rank himself through the ranks of the police force and trying to get to a bigger city, sort of like San Francisco, and they even talk about moving there at some point in time within the film. The film takes place in Green Mills, Montana, and that's the location that they currently live. James Marsden has a really great life. He has a really great girlfriend. He's pretty much trying to appease sort of the public and trying to make them happy, do a good thing for himself and his family, but he's also kind of trying to be a better person himself. He's trying to question whether or not he wants to stay in Green Mills or Green Hills, whatever it's called, or go to San Francisco. And that's kind of the theme constantly throughout this film, is not only family but also the bouts that Sonic has to deal with in terms of being sort of the only sort of creature of his kind on this planet. Sonic has no other friends, he has no other relatives on this planet. He's pretty much forced to flee because this owl that he called Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is kind of funny. There's a lot of pop culture references in this film. Surprisingly, the music in this movie, the score and everything, is pretty great. There's a lot of really good classic Sonic the Hedgehog theme songs that are kind of put into the film quite subtly. There's also a lot of, rock and roll, hip hop and pop music, which it doesn't overstay its welcome. A lot of the times in this movie, these soundtracks kind of overplay their welcome while you're kind of watching the film, and it just becomes one of those things where you're like, oh, they're just trying to use this music to kind of tell the story. And Sonic the Hedgehog definitely doesn't do that. You kind of feel sort of the emotions of the character as it's going along. Sonic originally is playing ping pong by himself. You kind of see sort of his cave, and that he has, his comics and stuff like that. He's got a ping pong table, and eventually he kind of goes to this baseball arena, and there's a bunch of kids playing baseball, and he's like, ooh, the playoffs and stuff like that. And he's kind of like a kid in a candy shop. He's kind of watching them, and late at night he kind of plays baseball pretty much by himself. He plays as the pitcher, the catcher, and the first base, second base, and third baseman. And eventually he kind of realizes like, oh shit, I'm pretty much all alone. I'm pretty much the only person here, and he's kind of upset by that because he kind of wants to have somebody that he can relate to. And that's when he kind of stumbles along James Marsden, and James Marsden's pretty much a family man. He's trying to raise his family. He's trying to create sort of a life for himself and for the person that he loves. But her name is Maddie, and she's an African American woman, and I think she actually did a pretty good job in this film. I think all the actors really outshined each other in this movie, and I think that they couldn't have picked a better cast of characters. I've liked James Marsden in the past with things like Straw Dogs, as I've said. I've liked him in the past with the X-Men film. Jim Carrey is the classic Jim Carrey from the movies like Bruce Almighty, The Mask, as well as pretty much any of the characters that he's played in the past are all here, and I think that's really great because I think that Jim Carrey really does deserve a comeback. I think he's getting a lot of flack for some of the comments that he said in sort of interviews, post sort of the interviews for this movie and stuff like that, and I don't think that has anything to do with the film itself. You can kind of separate the art from the artist, and I really do think that Jim Carrey is really, really great in this movie, so hats off to him as Dr. Robotnik. I didn't know if he was going to play sort of the Grinch line, or if he was going to do sort of a certain character that he's done in the past, but kind of do it so that, it fit the Robotnik kind of angle. But apparently Dr. Robotnik rides around in sort of this semi-truck. It's kind of a state-of-the-art semi-truck with a bunch of different monitor screens, and it looks kind of like Megatron from the Transformers films, and I'm pretty sure they probably used the Transformers Megatron model that they had for that film and just reconverted it for the Jim Carrey sort of Dr. Robotnik Transformers style vehicle. There's also a scene in this film where they're being chased around in sort of an action scene, and Sonic pretty much takes down one of the drones that Jim Carrey is using in this film, and it's kind of like a drone sort of vehicle and kind of unbursts sort of this tank design. He calls it, he's like, oh, I just think that a vehicle just had a baby and stuff like that, and I thought that was pretty funny. There's a lot of really great one-liners in this movie. If you're not paying attention during this film, you'll definitely miss them. There's even some moments in this film, sort of Easter eggs from the video games, that if you're not paying attention, you will miss them. There's also a really cool post-credit scene where one of the characters from the original Sonic games comes back, and it's pretty much setting up a sequel, so I really hope that this movie does pretty damn well to the point where it can get a sequel, because I would definitely like to go see another Sonic movie. I was really concerned with the fact that this is a 90-minute long film. How can they fit 90 minutes of story time into one movie in order to get you to kind of care about these characters? And you really start to feel for this character after a while. Even though it's a CGI character in sort of a realistic world, you sort of feel for Sonic after a while, especially with the fact that he's the only one of his kind sort of on this planet, and you've got government agents that think he's sort of an alien monster, or the Blue Devil as they call him, and they're trying to hunt him down because he kind of blew this sort of EMP pulse when he was kind of playing baseball by himself. He has this power that when he runs really fast in concentric circles, if he does it for too long, you know, his power kind of builds up and then it kind of just launches electricity and stuff like that. And that's where you see James Marsden's character kind of pick up the hair in the film when he's investigating the area and stuff like that, and they bring in sort of like a hazmat team, kind of quarantine the environment, trying to figure out what happened. And then that's when sort of the government agents are like, we're going to bring in Dr. Robotnik, and sort of that's when you get Jim Carrey's character coming to the frame. I really didn't expect much from this movie. I was going in there completely blind because I played the games on the Sega Genesis, I played the games on the GameCube. I wasn't that familiar with Sonic because I didn't really watch the TV show. I did play some of the games in the past, especially being sort of a kid from the 90s and playing those games on my friends' systems and stuff. I really did like the Sonic games when I did play them. I came out surprised, you know, a lot of people before this movie even started playing were like, oh, this movie has, you know, homophobic slurs and stuff like that, go see Birds of Prey instead, which, you know, Birds of Prey is a rated R film, so why would you take your kids to that movie anyway? But this movie definitely doesn't have any of that. This is just simple sort of movie about trying to get from point A to point B. It's a road trip movie, and I think it does a really good job of that. There's even one point in time where Sonic pretty much starts a bar fight, and I think that scene was pretty cool because you see sort of James Marsden and Sonic pretty much kicking ass, and there's sort of a nod to the X-Men films where you see that scene where Quicksilver is kind of running around in circles and kind of messing with the people. That's sort of the scene in the movie, is kind of what Sonic does in the film, and I think it's really great. I think that you're a longtime Sonic fan. If you played any of the games in the past, if you have children, you should definitely take them to this movie. Do not take them to see Birds of Prey because that is not a family-friendly film. This movie is PG, so I think it's definitely a good time for family, friends, and, you know, yourself as well. If you're an adult, I think you're gonna really have a good time, because I was kind of worried. I'm like, I'm spending $12 for this movie plus the $5 or $10 that I paid to pay for the tickets. I saw this in an XDX screen, and honestly, I really did have a good time. I thought this was really great. The sounds were amazing. That was because it was playing on a Dolby Atmos screen. I don't really like Dolby Atmos that much, just because when you hear the gunfire, it's actually like in your face and everything. I really do like it just on a normal screen, but, you know, for this movie, it did quite work. There's an ending battle sequence that happens with Sonic and Dr. Robotnik, which is kind of cliched. You can kind of predict, you know, halfway through this film what's going to happen towards the end of the movie. But, you know, other than that, you know, I didn't really have any gripes with this movie. The one gripe that I did have was they go to this skyscraper in San Francisco, and the entirety of this movie, you're seeing sort of Sonic and James Marsden kind of have a back and forth of why he's trying to leave Green Hills or Green Mills, whatever it's called. The fact that, you know, Sonic thinks he's kind of an asshole because he's really great life, a really great home kind of where he's at, and yet he's trying to leave it and stuff like that. And Sonic's never really had a home because he's had to be forced to leave his home and pretty much be evicted from that place. By the end of the film, you get the hint that maybe James Marsden is probably not going to take the job in San Francisco, even though he kind of wants a little bit more responsibility. And maybe they'll set that up for a sequel where they kind of have James Marsden doing a little bit more in this movie. But I really did like this movie. I think that all the cast and characters really did a great job. I think that there's a lot of laughs that not only just for young adults, but also adults, especially people in their 20s and 30s, will definitely recognize some of the humor in this movie, especially sort of the bar scene and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend you go see Sonic the Hedgehog. I think that this movie definitely breaks sort of the video game curse. I think that had they stuck with sort of that hideous sort of design that they had for the original Sonic the Hedgehog trailer, this movie would not be as good as it is, and I don't think that people would care about Sonic as good as they probably do with this movie, seeing sort of the CGI animated cartoony version of it like in the video games. And like I said before, definitely do stay for the post-credit sequences because there is a couple of them, and so I would highly suggest that you guys go out and spend your money, go see this movie, give the studios the money that they deserve for taking a couple months off to kind of fix the CGI and stuff like that, because this could have been a train wreck of a film. They could have went out on a press tour and everything and kind of badmouthed the fans and told them the fans are wrong, but Jeff Fowler really came out and said the fans were right, that we wouldn't be here without the fans, and that's definitely the truth, because I went out and kind of supported Jim Carrey and James Marsden and all the cast and crew of this film because I think they did a really really, really fantastic job. And Sonic the Hedgehog gets an A for me. I think that this movie is not probably going to win any Oscars. I definitely don't think that this, maybe it will. Who knows if they kind of recognize this film. But I think this will be sort of a cult classic families watch that people buy on Blu-ray and watch over and over again because it is that great. This movie doesn't overstay its welcome. Far too often in these movies, especially kids films, they kind of push out sort of the runtime so they can put more stuff in this movie that is really unnecessary and everything. But Sonic the Hedgehog really doesn't do that. And so I give hats off to the creative team behind Sonic because they really did do a good job. And it actually made me care. There's even at one point in time where Sonic almost died. You kind of almost want to cry in the theater because of that. And it's kind of a heartwarming sort of moment between, you know, James Marsden and who plays the character Tom in this movie. You see sort of the worry on his face when he goes to bring Sonic to his current girlfriend, Maddie. And he's like, you know, you're a veterinarian and stuff. Can you help him? And she's kind of like, I don't know any of these creatures. Like, I've never seen one of these things before in my life. And you constantly have characters like Dr. Robotnik going after Sonic because they're trying to abduct him and kind of do science experiments on him. You kind of get the feeling that James Marsden adopts sort of Sonic as his own, like a member of his own family. I can kind of relate to that. I can kind of relate to kind of adopting sort of a dog or a pet or something like that as a member of your own family because I've kind of had pets in my past and stuff like that. So anyway, I think that you should definitely go out and see Sonic the Hedgehog. Definitely give these guys your money. It's definitely worth it. I would highly recommend going and seeing this movie. Can't stress this enough. I don't really want to spoil the rest of this film for you guys because I want you guys to go see this for yourself. But I had a good time. Maybe I'll go see it again. Maybe I'll give a more in-depth spoiler review in the future. I don't know, but I definitely plan on buying this on Blu-ray. So as always, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this movie review. And as always, guys, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.